Okay, so first, joint surfaces. Ta-da! Okay. This one is?
Convex.
Thank you. This one is?
Convex.
Yay. Okay. So anytime you have a concave on convex or a convex on concave, and they're really kind of the same thing, it just depends on what segment you're looking at. Because either way you're doing this, right? But it just depends. Is this one staying still and this one moving, or is this one staying still and this one moving? Okay. When you have movement like this, well, let's take the easy one first. The easy one is the spin. Okay? Spin is simply, you got this, let's say, here we go. So we got, this is now a shoulder. Okay? Shoulder. Glenoid fossa. Humerus. Okay? If I flex my GH joint, okay, or his, it could be hers, I'm not sure. Anyway, if I flex that, humerus goes up. What's the arthrokinematic? Well, it's just a spin. Okay? There's a point on this humerus around which it just kind of goes in a circle. Right? Spin. That's the easy one. And there's, for the GH joint, there's a couple different times you can do spin. One is simply shoulder flexion. Okay? The other is if it is at 90 degrees of abduction, you get a spin with external internal rotation. Okay? Both of those are spin. All right? Trying to think before I talk. It's usually a good thing. The only places, okay. So places that you get a spin include GH joint, hip joint. Thinking about the lower leg. I don't think there's any spins in the lower leg. Nothing remarkable. Anyway, other places you get a spin include the humeral radial joint, or radiohumeral joint, I don't remember which way it's supposed to go. Anyway, that one, this one right here. With pronation and supination, the radius will spin on the humerus, right, on the capitulum. That's what that's called, isn't it?
Something like
Thank you. Thanks for humoring me anyway. And I'm trying to think. I don't think there are any other spins that we worry about too much. I mean, you can look at, spine, and anyway. But as far as extremities, I think that's pretty much it. Okay. So that's the easy one. Got that out of the way. Everybody good with spin? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then, anytime you have something that's sliding over something else, there is always a roll and a slide together. Okay. Now a roll, I should have a ball. Oh look, there's balls over there. Woohoo! Yay for people who don't put their stuff away. All right. All right. So roll, and I like the spiky one. That's kind of fun. All right. Roll means, because it has spikes, it's going to really show us what we're doing. Okay. Roll means that as this moves, new points on this ball, and you can see because it's pointed, they're very clear, new points on this ball come in contact with new points on the surface that it's rolling on, okay? So right now we have this point on the surface, now we have the next point on the surface on a new place, next point on a new place, next point on a new place, next point on a new place, etc., etc., etc. That's a roll, okay? A slide, on the other hand, is the same point on one surface, contacts new points on the other surface. So if I take this ball and simply slide it, doesn't want to slide, but anyway, the same points on the bottom of the ball contact, next place, next place, next place, next place, etc. on the other surface. Okay, that's a slide. So we kind of have roll and slide defined here. Okay, next. Okay, now what does that have to do with these? Okay, let's do the easy one first. This is the easy one. matter at all, but anyway, okay. So we have your, again, let's say this is your glenoid fossa, okay? This is your humerus, okay, right there. For abduction, okay, abduction, arm comes up like this, right? Okay. The roll, it's easier if you kind of separate them out, okay? The roll, as this goes up, okay, the roll, if I have new points on here contacting new points on here, and I remove the slide, removing any slide possible, what will happen is this will, as it rolls, simply roll right up. Okay? Or if this were a have a big here, oh sure we do. Look at all this stuff they left up for us. That's just great. I was about to complain about this, but anyway, okay. It's a little easier if you see it this way. Okay, take the concavity out, and it's a little easier to see. Okay, pretend this is the glenoid fossa. Okay, so if I don't have any slide at all, and this just abducts, as it rolls, what happens? It goes up, right? The roll will make it go up. Okay, what would happen in your real person if, with your roll, it just went up? Eventually, it would dislocate. In the meantime, what's in between here? We got tendon, we got bursa, got all sorts of good stuff in that subacromial space, which we'll talk about when we do the shoulder lecture. But anyway, all sorts of good stuff in there. And if all we had was a roll, what would happen to all that good stuff? It would smush. Impingement. Thank you. All right, impingement. Yay. Who has that topic? Anyone here? Nope. Okay. There you go. So that's not going to work for us, right? What we need in order to prevent that from happening is, along with the roll, we need a counteracting slide. Okay? Now they both happen at the same time normally. So as it, say, abducts here, okay, you get a roll and a counteracting slide happening simultaneously. So it's a little hard to see. But if you divvy them out, roll, slide, it's a little easier to see. Okay? So when you have convex, thank you, convex, on concave, the roll and the slide go in opposite directions. Okay? Funny thing though, when you have concave, thank you, on the roll and the slide go in the same direction. Does that help to kind of divvy them out there a little bit? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So, if you ever forget that, and you will, if you ever forget that, you have the tools to figure it out right here in front of you. Okay? Concave, convex, put them together. Okay? If I am doing convex on concave, the roll and the slide go in opposite directions. On the other hand, if I am doing concave on convex, the roll and the slide go in the same direction. All right? Does that make sense? Perfect. Tools are right here. Okay? And you can do this during the test, by the way. Promise. Really, you can. All right. So that's the kind of the basics of arthrokinematics, how they work. Okay? Do you want to go through a few joints, figure that out?
Yes.
Okay. So what we just had then was shoulder. So we just did abduction, superior roll, inferior slide. Okay. We did flexion. If we do external rotation with the arm at the side, so arms at the side here, I'm going to externally rotate, which doesn't work because he's attached. But anyway, arm at the side, externally rotate. All right. I got this going on. What's that going to be? Okay, well, let's divvy it out, and you can do it with your hands in front of you if you need to figure it out, okay? It will be a posterior roll with a counteracting anterior slide, Okay. Internal rotation, anterior roll, counteracting posterior slide. All right? Make sense? Okay, very good. What else we got going on at the shoulder? Flexion to spin, extension to spin, horizontal abduction. So now we're out like this, and we're going this way, and we're going this way. Okay. So horizontal adduction, let's start with that one. Horizontal adduction, bringing the arm around this way, would be a anterior roll, posterior slide. Horizontal abduction, come back this way, would be a posterior roll, anterior slide. Okay, make sense? Good. Let's look at the elbow. Okay, elbow, and let's look at the humeral ulnar joint, since that's kind of the main articulation of the elbow. All right. So humeral ulnar joint. Which one's convex? Which one's concave? Ulna's concave, into the humerus is convex. So now we got this going on. Okay. So from here, kind of like this, we're going to flex the elbow, right? Okay. And so it's going to be a anterior roll and an anterior slide. Anterior roll, anterior slide for flexion. Extension would be a posterior roll, posterior slide. Because it's concave and convex. All right? Okay. We already talked about the spin at the humeral radial joint. The proximal radial ulnar joint is just weird. We'll skip it. But it is. We don't have terms for it. We really don't. In the new version of Newman, he calls it a rotation, because there really isn't a good name for the. Well, we'll talk about it a little bit. There really isn't a good name for the thing for the arthrokinematic. What you have here is your radial notch in the proximal ulna, in radial head here. Okay, and as you pronate and supinate, the radius kind of goes in that notch. Okay. The thing that makes it screwy is that there is the annular ligament that goes all the way around it, and that annular ligament is lined with articular cartilage. So it's kind of like all the way around it. So it's like, well, what do you do with that? Well, personally what I do with it is I say it is, for pronation, a anterior roll, posterior slide. And for supination, a posterior roll, anterior slide. Because if you choose to mobilize this joint, that's what you do. You just consider it as the radius on that on the ulnar, the radius on the radial notch of the ulna as the articulation. Now Newman gets a little more picky about it and says, but that's not the only thing that's going on, because you have this annular ligament. And they say, well, yeah, I know. But when you mobilize it, this is what you do. Okay, good enough. Let's see, the distal radial ulnar joint, which is convex, which is concave.
Radius is concave.
Radius is concave. You have the ulnar notch and the distal radius, and then the ulnar head sits in that. So radius is concave, okay, and ulna is convex, okay. Which one moves?
Radius.
Radius. Ulna never moves in pronation supination, right? It can't, because it's locked down here with this very constrained joint at the humerus. Can't go anywhere, right? So it's the radius that's moving around the ulna. And so with the radius, let's say you are, I'm here in anatomical position, just like my mouth, okay? Then with hands. And I'm pronating, okay? Radius is going to come around this way, right? Which will be a roll and a slide in the same direction. What do you call that same direction? I don't know. When you start in pronation, it's anterior. By the time you're in mid-position, it's going posterior. It doesn't make sense to me. So what I say is it's a roll and a slide in the same direction, and they both go in the direction of the movement. all right? And it's true whether you're pronating or whether you're supinating. They go in the same direction, roll and slide, and they both go in the direction of the movement. They follow the radius around. Does that make sense? Okay, because that's a really important one if you are doing joint mobs. You will often do distal radial ulnar joint mobs, say after wrist fracture. It gets stiff like crazy. And just a little bit of joint mob in there does the trick. It's absolutely amazing how much motion you can get. All right. So if I'm mobilizing for pronation, all right, I will hold on to my ulna and I will push my radius, in this case kind of forward because it goes that way. If I'm here, I'll push it that way. If I'm here, I'll push it that way. All right, so that I get that slide going in the same direction as the movement. Does that make sense? Did I just lose you? Okay. Same thing with supination. You'll just push it this way, push it this way, so on. Okay. So that the slide goes in the same direction as the movement. I don't know why, but that one is like magic. If you only know one joint mode, know that one. It works really well. Okay. Then on to the wrist. What's convex? What's concave? Radius is concave. The proximal carpus is convex. Okay? So radius is concave, proximal carpus is convex. Okay? So like this. All right? So here, let me just straighten them out here. Okay, so we're like this. All right? Down like this. Or like this. Doesn't really matter. Okay? In order to flex the wrist, it is on, okay, and so you're going to get a anterior roll with a counteracting posterior slide, right? For wrist extension, okay, you're going to have a posterior roll with a counteracting anterior slide, also known as a volar roll, dorsal slide, same thing. Those terms mean the same thing. For radial ab and ad, all right, I'm getting an echo in my thinking. Radial ab and ad, let's just look at, say for the left hand, radial abduction. Okay, so it would be, for the left hand, radial abduction, it would be a radial roll with a ulnar slide. Okay. Ulnar abduction would be or deviation would be a ulnar roll radial slide. Make sense? Okay, very good. We're getting to the end of the hand, the upper extremity here. The hand is pretty darn easy. I'm going to skip the CNC joints for now, but let's look at MP and IP joints. They're all the same. Okay. Let's take the MP joint. It's what on what? Remember the shapes of your joints. Which one's round, which one's hollow? It is concave and convex because the proximal surface of the phalanx is concave and the metacarpal head is convex, and it's the same for the IP joints as well. Okay, so if I am trying to, here we go, flex my fingers. Okay, so let's just stick with MP joint for now, but MP flexion. All right, I'm going to have a what? Palmar roll and slide. It's concave and convex. All right. For MP extension, I'm going to have a dorsal roll and slide. All right. Okay, make sense? All right. Same thing for the IP joint. We got through the arm pretty much. The only thing we haven't done yet is the thumb. Oops, see there. All right, so for the thumb, we have ye old saddle joint. All right, riding on your horse. Did Carrie show you riding on the horse? You gotta do riding on the horse, and I didn't ride my horse. All right, so in one direction, it's going to be let's say the red line, okay, is going to be concave on convex, like that, okay, so that would be a roll and slide in the same direction, okay. And the blue line is going to be convex on concave, which would be a roll in one, or let's see, am I getting this right? A roll in one direction and a slide in the other direction, okay? I think I did that right. Roll in one direction, slide in the other direction. It's a little harder to visualize with the saddle joint, but it's the same, the same rules. All right. The thing that you need to remember with the thumb is, well, which way is it convex and which way is it concave? So how do you remember that? Well, you remember with a little horsey. Okay, and if I had my little horsey, which I don't have, I would use it. But okay, so. I think we can do it with this. So you got your horse, you're riding your horse with no name. Remember that song, anybody? Okay. Anyway, you're riding your horse, and you're riding through the desert on your horse with no name. And where does your horse want to go when it's going through the desert?
To water.
Yay, to water! So you're riding through the desert and you want water, so what do you look for?
Water.
What grows by water in the desert?
Plants.
Plants. What kind of plants?
Cactus.
Cactus. What else?
Palm tree.
Palm trees. Get it? Palm trees? Palm trees? Palm trees. Okay. Palm trees. Yeah. So the horse will be, so here's the, let's see. Here's the saddle. Okay. Front of the saddle, back of the saddle, you're sitting here. Okay. The horse will be riding toward the palm. So your thumb, CMC joint, is going, the proximal surface of the trapezium, the trapezial surface, will be, gotta make sure I say this right, concave in an anterior-posterior direction, and convex in a medial-lateral direction. So it goes like this as you ride toward the palm. Trees. Okay? So here's your metacarpal, here's your trapezium. And so for thumb, if it's this movement here, whatever you want to call that, abduction and radial abduction, radial abduction, it's going to go like this. Okay? It is a concave on convex. So they slide and roll go in the same direction. If you are looking at this motion, all right, it's going to be the red one, convex on concave, like this, and the roll and the slide are going to go in opposite directions. Okay? I know it takes a little bit to get your head around the thumb CMC joint, all right? But if you remember that the horse always rides toward the palm, you'll be good. Okay? Alrighty. Upper extremity. Lower extremity. Should we talk about lower extremity? Probably. I think it was on the test, so here, just tuck that in there. Alright. So, hip joint. The acetabulum, thank you, is convex, or I'm sorry, concave. See, I knew I would do it eventually, so stop me when I do. Concave. And the femur is convex. Okay, so here we are, got our hip joint. Hip joint, okay. Flexion, spin, right? Okay. Abduction is going to be a superior roll, inferior slide. Okay. Internal rotation, anterior roll, posterior slide. External rotation, posterior roll, anterior slide. Okay. Let's see what else we have to do with the hip. Anything else we need to do? Yeah, that's pretty much it. We don't do horizontal ab and ad, really. At least I don't. Okay. Then for the knee, let's bring the knee up here. Knee. Okay, it is let's in the lower extremity, let's just keep it all open chain for now. Okay. When you go closed chain, so that your foot stays put and you are moving over your foot, that's closed chain. Everything just gets exactly backwards, totally reversed. Okay. Let's go with open chain for now, just to keep it straight. Knee, it is what on what? It is concave tibial plateau, with the concavity deepened a little bit with meniscus, on the convex distal end of the femur. Okay, so it's like this. Here's your knee. Okay, so for knee flexion, okay, you're going to go this way, so it is a posterior roll and slide. Posterior roll, slide. Okay. For extension, you're going to do a anterior roll and slide. Okay? I think that's all there is to know in the knee. There is a teeny little bit of rotation, that screw home mechanism that happens in full extension. Get about 15 degrees of rotation. But we don't need to worry about that too much. Okay. Boy, he's flexible. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Should we look at the talocrural joint? Let me say that. So this guy right down here, the distal end of the tibia and fibula make, if you just look at this motion here, okay, it's basically a what? And the distal end of the tibia. Concave, all right, right. And the talus is convex, okay. So we're doing this, like that, all right. And as we go into dorsiflexion, we have a anterior roll, posterior slide. To go into plantar flexion, you have a posterior roll, anterior slide. Okay. I think that's all we're going to do. I'm not going to talk about, again, the tarsal joints. The metatarsal phalangeal and interphalangeal joints in the feet are the same as the hand. They're all concave on convex, at least in open chain.
When you are determining if it's concave on convex or the other way around, which bone do you look at first?
Well, I think of things always in open chain, and that's how I'll always test it, is open chain. So it's always the distal bone moving on the proximal bone. All right. If you switch it around, and even in the upper extremity, make it closed chain, whatever, closed chain, then everything switches back around, and all you got to know is know that. That's fine. But generally, we're looking at things open chain.
So always look at an open chain.
I think it's easier to always look at it the same way. Now, if you were to get into a situation where you're doing a lot more with the lower extremity, you'll end up looking at things a lot more closed chain. But in the upper extremity, the majority of the time it's used open chain anyway, so we may as well look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.